Have you ever noticed that sometimes you don't fully understand how much someone loved you until after they're gone? I know that sounds strange. You may know they loved you. You may never doubt it. But sometimes after they're gone, you start discovering things that reveal just how deep that love really went. That's where I find myself right now. My grandfather passed away recently, and I've spent the last few weeks helping with the estate, going through belongings, finding paperwork, opening drawers, sorting through memories, and trying to make sense of a world that feels a little different without him in it. Actually, a lot different. And something unexpected has happened. I keep finding evidence. Now, before I became a content creator, before I became a homeschooling mom, before most of the things people know me for today, I was an attorney. I still am an attorney. And one thing attorneys do all day long is look at evidence, interpret evidence, documents, photographs, witnesses, records, statements. You learn very quickly that what people say matters, but what they do often matters even more. Actions leave evidence. Patterns leave evidence. Choices leave evidence. And lately, I've realized that love leaves evidence too. Not the kind that shows up in a courtroom, the kind that shows up in a cedar chest, the kind that shows up in a drawer, the kind that shows up in things nobody expected anyone else to find. As we've been going through my grandfather's belongings, I found things that made me stop in my tracks. He kept my law school graduation information. He kept my Florida Supreme Court swearing-in materials and even wrote my name at the bottom. He kept brochures, programs, calendars that I made every year for Christmas, cards, things that most people would have thrown away years ago. And every time I find something, I have the same reaction. And he would also date the cards. I think, Papa kept this, not because it was valuable, not because it was rare, not because anyone else would want it. He kept it because it mattered to him, because it was connected to someone he loved, me. And I don't know why that keeps surprising me. Maybe because when people love us for a long time, we start taking that love for granted. Not in a bad way. We just assume it. It's always been there. So we stop noticing all the little ways it's being expressed until one day we find a brochure from 20 years ago and realize he couldn't throw this away because it was about his girl. One of the moments that hit me the hardest was finding proof that he had saved things from milestones that I had almost forgotten myself. Events I attended, achievements I celebrated, moments that mattered to me for a season and then got tucked away in memory. But he kept them. Which means long after I stopped thinking about them, he hadn't. Long after I moved on to the next challenge, he was still proud. Long after the ceremony ended, he was still remembering. And then there are the stories people tell you after someone dies. I had farmers come up and tell me how proud he was of me. People share conversations I wasn't present for, moments where my grandfather talked about me when I wasn't in the room. And honestly, I think those stories have impacted me even more than the things we found, because those weren't performances. He wasn't trying to impress me. He wasn't trying to earn points. He was simply speaking honestly when I wasn't there to hear it. That's powerful. One of my favorite stories came from my cousin. She laughed and asked me, "How did you get a staunch Democrat to vote Republican?" And I laughed because my grandfather was absolutely a lifelong Democrat. And yet when I ran for office, he voted for me, and he voted for my husband too. My cousin couldn't figure it out. But the answer was actually pretty simple. He wasn't voting for a party. He was voting for people he loved. And the older I get, the more I understand that. Because love doesn't always show up in dramatic ways. Sometimes love shows up in votes. Love shows up when you can barely walk, but you want to support your granddaughter and you want to support her husband. Sometimes it shows up in saved calendars. Sometimes it shows up in graduation programs. Sometimes it shows up in a man getting on an airplane so he can attend your swearing-in ceremony some 15, 16 hours away. And sometimes it shows up years later when you're sorting through belongings and discovering pieces of a story you never fully understood while the author was still alive. I think that's why this season has been both heartbreaking and beautiful. Heartbreaking because I miss him. I miss him every single day, every day. Sometimes someone mentions him. Sometimes my youngest daughter, who's 3, mentions him and asks if we can go see Papa. How I wish we could. Sometimes I see something that reminds me of him, and it feels like a punch to the chest, because I wish I could tell him one more story and ask him one more question, hear him call me girl one more time. But it's also beautiful because every week I seem to discover another piece of evidence, another reminder, another story, another clue about how much I was loved. And maybe that's the lesson I want to leave you with today. We spend so much time worrying about what will people say about us. But maybe a better question is, what evidence are we leaving behind? What will people find? What stories will they hear? What memories will survive us? Will they find proof that we loved well? Will they find evidence that we showed up? Will they find reminders that people mattered to us? Because my grandfather left evidence everywhere. And every time I uncover another piece of it, I realize something new. Love doesn't disappear when a person does. Sometimes it takes years to fully discover all the places they left it behind. And for that, I will always be grateful. Tell me about someone whose love left evidence behind. What's something you found, heard, or discovered that reminded you how much they cared? Feel free to leave that in the comments. Thank you so much for tuning in to Recovering Perfectionist Mama, Grace in Progress. My name is Buffy, and I just want to say thank you so much for tuning in. And if you got value in this, please feel free to like and subscribe and pass the love on. Hope you have a great day, and hopefully you'll come back and see me again soon. Bye-bye.